President-elect Barack Obama had hinted that he would hold off on tax increases during this economic downturn. But did his top aide just say, not so?
Will you hold off on any tax increases?
Well, look, the question is on the Bush tax cuts for the very wealthiest Americans, and it's something that we plainly can't afford moving forward, and whether it expires or whether we repeal it a little bit early will determine later, but it's going to go. It has to go.
That was David Axelrod on Meet the Press this weekend, and Stephen Moore says the tax hikes are coming sooner than we think. He is with the Wall Street Journal editorial board. Stephen, welcome to the program. Listen, as I understand it, if we repeal the Bush tax cuts, we're down pretty much across the income stream by about 3%. If we reduce or eliminate a 3% cut, is that not, in a sense, a tax hike, even on members of the middle class?
Well, there's no doubt about it. You know, it's almost comical when David Axelrod says, gee, we really can't afford to keep the Bush tax cut in place. At the same time, they want to spend $1 trillion on new government spending. You know, I think that the problem here is we have a stock market that will finish this year somewhere between 35 and 40% down. This is the worst time that I can think of to raise tax on stocks through an increase in the capital gains and dividend tax. It'll hurt all investors. And don't forget, the people who pay those highest income tax rates tend to be small businessmen and men and women, and those are the people who are the major employers in this country.
You know, the argument that we hear in the media on those who support the tax increases say the rich need to, quote, pay their fair share. This has got to be one of the greatest misconceptions in American business and tax policy, correct? Because the rich are paying a lot.
They sure are. If you look at the top 1%, the top 1 out of 100 taxpayers, they pay 40%. The top 10% pay 60% of the taxes. So you have a very top-heavy tax system. And, you know, when Bush cut those tax rates, the share of taxes actually paid by the rich increased because they expanded their income, they expanded their businesses, and paid more taxes. That's what we want, isn't it? Vibrant businesses that pay more taxes.
True or false, Stephen, under the proposed Obama plan, as we know it from when he was campaigning, if it goes through, nearly or just about 1/2 of the nation will not pay anything in income tax.
That is true, and it's a travesty because that means half of the American people don't have any stake in the government. They don't pay anything for the government services that they receive, and that makes them want, you know, bigger and bigger government all the time because they don't have to pay for it. That's a big problem for a democracy.
And everybody hates to talk about supply-side economics. It's easier to say,
I love to talk about it.
Well, listen, I would like to too, Stephen, but most people, from a political point of view, it's difficult to say, if I reduce something, I will get more of that. That's a hard concept maybe for people to understand, but it's true. And as we've seen tax rates come down, IRS, this is not made-up right-wing data. This is IRS data shows as you reduce tax rates, the income to the government goes up, correct?
That's what the book that we just wrote, The End of Prosperity, is all about. If you look, that happened under John F. Kennedy, a Democrat. It happened under Ronald Reagan, a Republican. They both cut tax rates, and the tax payments by the rich actually increased because they expanded the size of their incomes and their businesses. Look, you want a tax system that tries to make poor people rich. You don't want a tax system that tries to make rich people poor. And sometimes I think some of the Obama economists have that mixed up.
You know, and what people forget, you mentioned John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy, on inflation-adjusted dollars, so far of any president, has enacted one of the biggest income tax cuts in American history, correct? It was called the Revenue Act of '64. It was passed, unfortunately, after he was assassinated. But make no mistake, it was a tax cut on the wealthy, and it increased government revenue, correct?
Well put. By the way, you get an A in economics today. I'm impressed with your economic history. You're exactly right. And in fact, you know, Kennedy argued that the best way to stimulate the economy, because the economy in the early 60s was in a hole, was to cut taxes, make people more productive. He said that an economy overburdened by taxes will never produce enough revenues or enough jobs. Those are words for today.
You know, the Sark Islands are looking pretty attractive these days.
They are. By the way, the rest of the world has been really very aggressively cutting tax rates. So if we were to raise our tax rates, as I look at it, we'd be the only country in the world that would be raising taxes in a competitive global marketplace. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
It doesn't either. Stephen Moore, the Wall Street Journal editorial board. It's the only A I ever got. Thank you very much, Stephen.
There you go. Nice to see you.